I'm Michael David with Eye on Sun Valley, and this is Listening In. Today, to talk about domestic violence and sexual assault, my guests are from the Advocates, Shannon Nichols, Tricia Swartling, and Kate Cox. Ladies, this issue is front and center in our society, tell us what domestic violence is, Tricia.
It's a big topic, but the Advocates looked at it as any type of relationship violence inflicted on somebody by somebody who has power over that person. So dating violence, family violence, stalking. We also work with people about bullying, so that's beyond the term of domestic violence, but it encompasses relationship violence.
Right. And Shannon, I told you about a great PSA piece that I saw with Jamie Lee Curtis that said, "Hurt people hurt people." Mm-hmm. What is it that would drive someone towards maybe committing some of these acts that Tricia spoke of?
Yeah, that's a great question. Domestic violence is not something that somebody's born with. Nobody's born being abusive, but it is a behavior that's learned. And oftentimes it's learned from media. It's learned from the family that we grew up in. When somebody sees somebody be powerful and get what they want, get control, you start paying attention to that, and the behaviors you start creating behaviors that end up being abusive in relationships.
Right. And Kate, you're on the board, but you're a professional in this field as well. It doesn't just happen like everything's rosy and wonderful in a relationship. Then one day, domestic violence occurs, right?
I think that we share differing opinions on this, which is okay, which is that it can happen in a variety of different ways. Mm-hmm. So it can be, there's a grooming that will happen, right, where they'll start off doing what's a term called love bombing, right? So they'll do a lot of gift giving, a lot of physical attention and affection. They're pretty relentless in wanting to be with you all the time, which looks a lot like when we fall in love. But it's it has a different flavor on it. It's a little excessive. It's a little codependent or something like that.
Right.
And then kind of once they've got you recruited, then there tends to be this other element that happens where, and I think more often than not, it is a situation of bullying, of shaming, of name calling, and I think it starts small. I think it can get bigger. But I think there are also other experiences where you can be in a relationship for 11 months and it's amazing and he's amazing and she's amazing. The whole thing's great, and then there's a click and suddenly it's dangerous and violent and it devolves quickly. But once one action starts, that I think is how we know the thing begins to devolve.
Right. You know? And are there warning signs sometimes? That people can look for in a relationship?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that Kate said that's so important is when we talk about domestic violence, we're not just talking about the physical aspect of domestic violence. You can be in a very abusive relationship that does not include any hits or threats, things like that, where you're not physically harmed, but you are absolutely controlled by the individual. Mm-hmm. And so when we're talking about warning signs, those controlling tactics are what you really look for. So somebody who wants really, really quick involvement, they tell you they love you after 3 weeks, they want to spend all of their time with you. They isolate you. They don't want you to hang out with your best friend. They don't want you to talk to your family regularly. They have ideas about who you can talk to on the phone, what kind of clothes you should wear. They feel like they get to make all of the decisions in the household.
Right.
And the biggest warning sign is somebody that's ever been abusive in a past relationship. Mm-hmm. So that's a really important thing to remember, that oftentimes, unless there's intervention, these behaviors don't just change on their own.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we talked a little bit about the similarities between someone that abuses a pet or abuses a child or something like that. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the Advocates has made it important that anyone who comes to us can bring their pets, cats or dogs, to shelter, because typically abusers will abuse pets, and they're often also abusing the children.
Right.
So they go hand in hand.
Right. Do you see that sometimes? A certain type of person that is going to commit this type of violence?
I wish.
Right.
It would make life so much easier. Right?
Right.
So the U.S. Justice Department has some criteria. So it tends to be somebody that has an excessive reaction to jealousy, mm-hmm. right? It tends to be pretty serious, significant, and sudden mood swings. We're looking for people that can that have a tolerance for violence, which is really, I think, a murky territory because, like, you know, we all know that there's all these video games out there that are quite violent. There's a lot of really violent movies, but they can tolerate it,
Sure.
right? Or they've been in abusive situations in the past where they weren't the perpetrator, but they can speak sort of cavalierly about that
Right.
violence that happened to them, and I think that is, other than that, there's not much more warning, right? I
Right.
think it's all shapes and sizes.
Sure,
really.
sure. And intellectually, we can all say, "Oh, you got to get yourself out of that situation when it's happening." Like as you see the signs or things like that, or when the click or the snap occurs. But let's talk a little bit about the obstacles that people face or that prevent them from seeking help.
Yeah, I like to do this as a you tell me why you think somebody has difficulty leaving an abusive situation, because it's easy for people to go, oh, I would never tolerate that. You know, if something happened, somebody hit me, I'd be out of there first. It's like, well, what if you really, really love this person?
Right.
And they kept telling you they were going to change and never do it again. And, you know, you're married, you had kids, you're pregnant, and this was happening. And, you know, what are you going to do to support yourself? You know, access to financial resources. I mean, there's so many reasons, you know, maybe you live in a rural area. I mean, we live in Idaho and we serve a 4-county region, Blaine, Camas, Custer, and Lincoln. And, you know, people live in the middle of nowhere. They may not have transportation to get away.
Sure.
You know, the abuser might be controlling their phone. Again, you
Right.
know, we have had clients who, they don't even get enough money to buy groceries, or their food intake is limited. I mean, there's, you know, so as far as like, you know, oh yeah, tomorrow they're going to leave. They may not have their own checking account. They may not have a credit card. They
Right.
may not have any way to get out. And that's why we talk about how people who have higher incomes often, they don't maybe come to the advocates, although they do sometimes, but they do have ability to often to buy their own plane ticket, go rent their own place, whereas lower income clients may not have the ability to do that, which is why they may come to us more often than not, at least for financial. The emotional support, you know, obviously everybody can benefit from.
Sure.
One thing that I think is really at the forefront, it is extremely dangerous for a victim of abuse to leave a relationship. It is the most
Right.
dangerous time. Most people who, most serious injuries in an abusive relationship happen when somebody has left the relationship. Homicides happen at a much greater rate when somebody has left the relationship. So it is a real issue of safety when somebody leaves, and that's what the advocates are so good at, is helping somebody safely plan for when is the best time, what are the resources that you need. And it's also important to remember, an abusive relationship ends when the abuser chooses to stop abusing. So it's not as simple as I'm just going to leave and move out. An abusive person does not accept that as a reality. So they're going to follow, they're going to stalk, they're going to make false claims about you within the community. So it really is important to have a strong foundation and support system, which is what the advocates are able to provide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it is so important that somebody who's thinking about leaving an abusive relationship reach out and get the information to make sure that they're able to do it safely.
Sure. And unfortunately, there's oftentimes children involved in this situation. What kind of resources are there then for people that have children involved, and how they can help with that?
I mean, we provide the same level of service to the children as the women can bring their kids to shelter. We have kids group, we have counseling, we can do case management, support the kids in a lot of different ways.
Right.
Same ways that we can support their moms.
Sure, and we talk about a learned behavior that's going on. Talk a little bit about some of the work that's being done with our youth in our community to kind of help them start early with the healthy relationships and things like that, because bullying, you said too, is one of those things.
Yeah. The Advocates has been in the schools doing prevention education since we started, so, you know, almost 30 years. So one of the first things we started doing was working in elementary schools and making sure that kids who might be in abusive situations know that, you know, there's help available, and that it's not okay for their parents to be fighting.
Sure.
And so we go into elementary schools, and typically anytime we go into any classroom at any age group, kids will come forward and talk to us, you know, and younger kids are going to say things in front of everybody. Oh yeah, my dad pushed my mom to the china
Right.
cabinet last night. Whereas the older kids, they're not going to. But now we speak to every child, well, youth, I should say, grades 5 through 12, automatically are in all those classrooms teaching bystander intervention, bullying prevention, about consent, dating violence prevention, sexual assault prevention, healthy relationship education. Let's spin it on the positive. What does
Sure.
a healthy relationship look like? How can you have a healthy relationship? So we are actively out there educating youth all the time, and we actually now we have 10 youth activists that are high school that work for us. We pay them, and they're in the schools as well. They're called Every Teen Has a Choice, the ETCs,
Yep.
and they do peer-to-peer education and advise us how to reach out to young people
And
in a
that
way
makes
that'll speak to them.
right. That makes a big difference
Yeah.
too when you've got people, your peers,
Yes. Right.
working with you.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. We talk about child abuse or sexual abuse that takes place too, maybe at a younger age, and it's something that happened years ago. Talk a little bit about the importance of at some point being able to muster that courage to seek help. It's important, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that at least in my practice, one of the things that's hard about it is that if it happens when you're really young, you compartmentalize it. So you forget that it's occurred, and then you start to have behaviors that become maladaptive, right? So
Right.
you're numbing or you're dissociating. And so there are moments in which things get triggered out of the blue, and suddenly you know something or you get a flashback. And I think that is incredibly scary. One of the hardest things that I notice, at least in the community that I serve, is that they're really keen, victims of sexual abuse when they're little are really keen to believe that they're making it up, and that they've kind of fabricated it, and that it couldn't have happened. And it's not so much about protecting the person that would have been doing the violence. It's about like, well, I'm overreacting. I'm having too big of a reaction, which I think is thematic when it comes to violence and domestic violence, which is that I'm overreacting. It's not that big of a deal, and it's like. And I think that at least part of my job in my practice is to state very clearly, like, this is a big deal, this deviates from normal behavior, and then to help them feed back with their experience, which is, oh yeah, I do feel sick to my stomach when I talk about it or when it happens. Or, they have these cues that they'll just shut down because it doesn't serve them to survive and have these feelings at the exact same time, right? And so as a child, your main job in life, I mean, if you think about it from like a primal perspective, your main job is to not be left in the woods with the wolves, right? So whatever needs to happen so that mom and dad are going to maybe try to keep you safe.
Right.
And safe means shelter, and it means food, and it means attention, not necessarily love. So just being paid attention to, right? You will
Which is not always positive attention.
not
right?
always positive, right? You will do anything, and it's all unconscious, but you'll do anything to stay in that fold because
Right.
you have to.
Right.
So, and then I think we go back in therapy and we have to go address that issue and sort of grow that child up.
Sure.
and
Well,
help them
then
realize there's
in
resilience.
combination with being in the school with young people too, and helping them understand at the appropriate level what is healthy is so key. Hashtag Me Too is a big thing lately. Have you seen locally any positive effects from that? Giving empowering women to come forward and talk about it.
I mean, I think we're seeing people having some aha moments that before would have been like, oh, back in the day it was okay for women to be treated this way, or women were asking for it because they would wear low-cut tops to go make a sale, and it's like, no, that's not okay. It's like they were doing it because that's how society has trained us to maybe behave or get what we want, and that's not okay.
Right.
And so now people are going, oh wow, now I'm getting it, why that's not okay. And I think Shannon was saying that it's giving people the strength to speak up about it.
Isolation and shame is such a key component of somebody who's experienced trauma, whether it's sexual violence or domestic violence. And so when you're able to hear somebody else who has a similar experience say out loud what has happened to them and require that there be consequences or require that change occur, it can really help you have some power. It can gain some power back and say, yes, I'm not alone. That did happen to me as well. It wasn't okay then. It's not okay now, and I have a right as an individual to be able to ask for respect.
Right.
And it might be retroactive, which is okay. And that's the thing. Just because the trauma you experienced it 20 years ago or 15 years ago or yesterday, it doesn't matter. The effect is the same, and we all need support to hold people accountable and say we do not want to live in a community where that is okay.
Okay, that's wonderful. The Advocates have been around since 1991, which we're so fortunate as a community to have this organization here, and you're kind of about to open a new chapter as well. Talk a little bit about the new facilities and what that's gonna what that will allow you to do as an organization for the community.
Yeah, so we are underway with the project that we're building a couple of new buildings in Haley that will add 18 units of safe housing. We believe that everybody deserves a safe place to call home,
Right.
and so we have people who they can't find or afford a safe place, so we have wait lists for our housing now, so we really want to be able to address the need. So we're building 18 units of housing and new client services center, and combining all of our staff in one location and
Great.
having a meeting room for all the nonprofit organizations in the community and to teach classes. And so that's underway, and the first building should be done about a year from now. We're really excited, and we're fundraising for that. So it's a big project.
That's so
Right in the heart of Haley, so it's awesome.
That's great. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us, furthering this conversation that's so important to have, and thank you for what you're doing in our community. And any kind of words that you would say to someone who is in an unhealthy relationship right now and experiencing some of these, or if they have a loved one or a friend that they know is that kind of what they can do to start that healing process.
That's a great question, and I love that it's a question coming from a man, because so often people think this is just a women's issue, and it's not. This is a human issue. So men and women and everyone, if you're concerned about somebody, let them know. Let's say, I'm concerned for your safety. I'm concerned for your children's safety. Can you come with me to the Advocates and talk to a professional and make sure that you're doing everything you can do to feel safe and to be safe? Let people know that they deserve to be respected, and that this behavior is not okay. And then put it back on them and say, how can I help?
Right.
And then listen. It's a really about listening. Again, people who've experienced violence, they are the experts of their situation. So even though we may want somebody to leave immediately, even though we may want them to make a different choice, let them know you're here for them. You'll help them through this process. And again, really try to get them connected to a professional advocate.
Right, and they can go at their each of us have different paces that we may want to proceed. Correct.
Yeah, I often think that the most helpful kernel to give somebody is this idea of, if you're feeling like you need to be keeping a secret because of what's happening in your relationship, we're already in the wrong territory.
Right.
Right? So it's like, whether or not your parent's an alcoholic or whatever, if you notice that you're keeping secrets, that's how you know that you've gotten onto the wrong path.
Right.
Which is really different than privacy, obviously, right? But I agree, and to know that there are people out there that support you, and I do think that the Me Too movement has brought forth the reality that the likelihood that if you're in a room with 12 women that you are the only one, or if you are in a room with 12 women and men that you are the only person that has been hurt,
Right.
is untrue. And so
Right.
hopefully that would bring camaraderie, that would bring a sense of like, there are people here that are no longer interested in sort of facilitating denial.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Great.
so-
Great. Well,
Yeah.
and no one's alone out there, and
Right.
and the advocates are here, and our community as a whole needs to make sure that everyone knows that they're here for them too. So
Yeah,
thank
Yeah.
you so much for being with us, ladies.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
This has been Listening In. I'm Michael David with Eye on Sun Valley. We'll be back after these messages.
Better food, better price, better service. Atkinson's Market, supporting local farmers since 1956.
No matter your taste or personal style, the shopping in Sun Valley has what you need for a day in the mountains or elegant night on the town. From bike sales, rentals, repair, outdoor accessories, and souvenirs to high-end, on-trend fashion and sportwear, including a hip, modern women's boutique, there is something for everyone in the Sun Valley Village. Don't forget about the kids, as stepping foot in the toy store is a dream come true for the little ones. The Sun Valley Village shopping options blend a touch of European style with Main Street USA hospitality, all in a charming mountain town setting.
The most exciting part about making custom jewelry is giving them something that's exactly what they described. I've drawn it on paper, and now it's a three-dimensional piece, and it's a finished piece, and it has diamonds or sapphires or whatever the stone might be. It's what was their envisioned piece of jewelry, and I get to complete that for them. I get to fulfill their dreams by building what they want. We opened in June of 1997, the premise that we wanted to serve the local community. We feel we've been very successful. We really listen to our customers' needs. Because of that, we've been in business almost 20 years now. Jewelry is a very personal item, and consequently it's a very emotional item for a lot of people. It's actually more about developing relationships with your customers than the pieces itself. We get to sell the engagement ring and then be involved in the wedding sometimes, then children come into the picture and anniversaries, and so we really get to know our customers and their families and see them grow. That's the greatest part about this business, is that we really connect with our customers and develop that personal relationship. That's the rewarding part of this business too. Haley is a small town, and so sometimes it's tough to run a small business in a small town, but it's also very rewarding because you get the support of your neighbors, and without our local support, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So we truly are thankful for the business that we have locally and appreciate our customers and want to thank our customers for doing business with us over the last 20 years.
Eye on Sun Valley, daily local news from beautiful Sun Valley, Idaho.